So tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about really taking up the opportunity of this precious human life, really to heart, taking advantage of this opportunity to go deeply into our practice, realize our nature, and offer it to the world. And just want to appreciate how nice the weather has been. It's been a beautiful day today. I was feeling really anxious earlier, and I'm starting to feel more relaxed, which is nice. I don't know, I was coming into this, I was feeling some sort of jitters, but it seems to be settling, which is nice. So Dogen said a few lines. They are, "You have gained the pivotal opportunity of human form. Do not pass your days and nights in vain. You are taking care of the essential activity of the Buddha way. Who would take wasteful delight in the spark from a flintstone?" He also said, "Your body is like a drop of dew on the morning grass. Your life is as brief as a flash of lightning, momentary and vain. This dew-like life will fade away. Avoid involvement in superfluous things." So every weekday morning, before we all sit for Zazen at 6:20, I go to my altar, light the altar, light incense, and take my mala off the altar, and holding it in my hands, I recite that, and then do 3 prostrations. And my intention is to really feel it, to feel the intensity of the rarity and the preciousness of my life. It's not an easy thing to feel. Somehow it can feel pretty easy to just feel like it's just another day and that it is, just time to sit, and maybe I'm a little sleepy and I don't really feel it. But the intention in doing my best to really connect with those words, and I think one of my favorite parts is, you are taking care of the essential activity of the Buddha way. Each of us is actually taking care of this Buddha way. We are. Whether you're doing it well or not, or whether I'm doing it well or not, is something to be said. But it's really, to me, extremely important to do our best and to take care of this opportunity. The time of our death is uncertain. We have each here gained the most pivotal of forms, a human, precious human life. And beyond that, we also have the incredible circumstance of having come into contact with the Dharma. This is considered profoundly rare and incredibly auspicious. So have you thought about that today? Have you let yourself really feel that this moment, this day, this life is incredibly important? Today, that's my intention, is to try to remind us of that. There's a story in Buddhism about a blind turtle that lives at the bottom of an ocean. This turtle rises up from the bottom of the ocean only once every 100 years. And on the surface of the ocean is a wooden yoke or a golden ring, or the point being a small target that the turtle has no intention to hit. It's just coming up, and think of the size of the ocean and the size of the turtle and the size of a ring. That level of rarity is what is spoken of, because imagine just how vast these Dharma realms are. A human life is that rare, even with 8 billion of us on the planet. And then think of another turtle who's there for whether or not you encounter the Dharma, right? So that's rare. This is an incredible opportunity. We have the faculties, the intelligence, the certain amount of suffering and the certain amount of pleasure, the certain amount of intellectual capacity, or just the ability to be perceptive, that is part of being human, and that's considered a extremely auspicious opportunity. So this matter is up to you and me. It's up to us, actually, really. This, it's really up to us whether or not humans get to be in contact with what we all are appreciating by coming here week after week and doing our best, right? Like, don't we want to make sure that that is available to future generations and forever, and available, across the world, when so many people don't even have food or the ability to feel peace, or there's so much war or strife going on in their lives. We are practicing for them by hopefully opening our hearts and trying to do our best to convey this wherever we go. It's a real big privilege, and it's a real big responsibility. When I was young, I really truly felt a deep sense of worthlessness. And maybe some of us can relate to this. You might have your own versions of it. Maybe it's worthlessness, maybe it's unlovability, maybe it's that the whole world rests on your shoulders, maybe it's that everyone thinks you're special but that misses you, maybe you feel misunderstood. Just thinking about those wounds that get developed, and I strongly felt a deep sense of worthlessness and even self-hatred growing up. I recall a particular day. This memory has been burned into my mind for many, many years, where my father had just screamed at me for seemingly no good reason at the dinner table. I was probably about 10 years old, and I went upstairs and I went to the bathroom and I stared into the mirror, and I couldn't be loud because if he heard me, he would be offended and be more upset. And I felt anger, but I didn't have anywhere to put it. So I looked into the mirror and I gripped the edge of the countertop, and looking right into my eyes, I just raged until my face was red, but it was silent. It was this painful state of like, I want to scream just like he did at something, somehow. And it got turned. I remember feeling it go into my heart. And I just decided I hated myself. I couldn't hate him, and this was what was available, and I hated myself. And I saw ugliness, and I saw insufficiency. And I turned on myself, and I cursed myself. And again, silently, because I couldn't allow him to hear me. I wasn't allowed to be mad at him. And that was when I was about 10 years old. And that thinking really followed me for a long time. And, there's still remnants of it. I spent not countless, but I spent many hours in therapy just working with that one image, right? Seeing myself, staring into that mirror, feeling that hatred, and like conversing with this part of me that hates me and wants me to be something greater or better or more. And maybe we can relate to this. I mean, I don't know if you all feel it to that level of like self-hatred and really intensity. Maybe you do. But we probably all have parts of us that are critical of us and want us to be more, want to feel us be special or important or something along those lines. And when I'm conditioned like that, it's really hard to feel like my life matters and I'm part of something that is important, right? Or that, I don't mean important in the inflated sense, I just mean that connected, right? That my life impacts your life impacts my life, and it's connected with the whole interdependent web of relationship. And so what I couldn't see, of course, right in that moment, it was that in 30 years, I'd be sitting here at Shambhala Center, practicing together with all of you. And what I couldn't see was that intrinsically, I was perfect, whole, and complete. And that's true of all of us, 100%, no holds barred, it is true. We are 100% utterly complete. It's this. This is wholeness and completeness. We are, without any shred of doubt, the whole functioning of the universe. The whole functioning of the universe is right here now, listening and speaking, being this. Even with wounds and confusions, even with these distortions, we're still the wholeness and the completeness of what is. And it's just so easy to miss this with as much pain, trauma, and distortion as we can absorb in this life. So I want to invite all of you, if you can feel those parts of you that have any resonance with that, can they come? Can they listen today? Can you feel them? Can they rest with us? Rest in your practice as we just appreciate the simplicity and silence of this room. And just inviting them here to drink of our peace, whatever we've cultivated. Maybe just appreciating how hard they've worked to protect us, keep us safe, keep us from being unlovable or whatever it is that they thought they were doing. Can they come here now and just trust with us? You know, can you offer them that trust? And in doing that, remembering that even if you're doing that for yourself, you're really not doing it for yourself. There are endless beings walking in samsara that resonate with what you feel, with what I feel. We can relate to them, and the more that we can open and feel those places of pain, the more we're helping whenever we interact with someone who can feel that too. I'll say more about that. But there's a wonderful, wonderful teacher named Mazu Daoyi, who was one of the earlier teachers in our Zen lineage. So I think about 6 or 7 maybe teachers, or 7 or so, maybe 8 after, because it's not the 6th patriarch, but after Bodhidharma. And he had a lot of students, and a lot of them were transmitted, and then he also was about 2 or 3 teachers ahead of Rinzai. So he's really directly related. It's Mazu Baizhang, or Hyakujo from Hakudo's Fox, and then Huang Po, or his Japanese name is Obaku, who's in the Hyakujo Fox koan, and Linji, or Rinzai, was Obaku's student. And he said, human delusions of time immemorial, deceit, pride, deviousness, and conceit have conglomerated into one body. So that one body is your body, my body, and all beings' bodies, but it's also just this one body that is also connected to all beings. And then he says, that is why Scripture says that this body is just made of elements, and its appearance and disappearance are just that of the elements, which have no identity. Human delusions of time immemorial, deceit, pride, deviousness, and conceit have conglomerated into one body. That is why Scripture says that this body is just made of elements, and its appearance and disappearance are just that of the elements, which have no identity. And so, can we really look closely at our life? These wounds, these pains, these conglomerations of our conditions and our habits, what are they made of? This is so important to me. What is, and maybe to all of us, right? What is this self which we call good or bad or low or high or any other identity or, label made out of? And he's saying, Scripture is here to show us that it's made out of elements. That's why we have Scripture or whatever teaching us to look closely and see the constituent parts of a thought or an emotion or an identity, and see that it's made up of smaller pieces, right? It's made up of various things like a feeling of rising anger, heat and tension and contraction in like one area that you can really feel. And then that's made up of smaller parts and smaller parts. And then looking into that, there's the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space. There's some teachings around how it's all made up of those. But then see that these elements have no identity, emptiness. That each thing, if really apprehended, if really deeply experienced, you cannot find something to hold on to. Earth is, we call it hard, but what is it really actually? And fire, what is it really actually? Can we be there so intimately that there's no fire and no hot and no cold and no earth, and yet everything's functioning as usual? We're not lost in some realm of nihilism. We're still completely ourselves. But there's a sense of of deep transparency, or a sense of permeability to all that we normally get all caught on and held up on. So can we look at this with our limiting beliefs? I'm not able to awaken in this lifetime. It must take many lifetimes. It's not possible today. It's not going to happen for me, or something like that. Or I'm not really very helpful to the world. I'm less important. These are utter garbage thoughts, and they do not represent reality. And so can we see what they're made of? Look at the thought itself, rather than what it wants you to look at, which is, an identity, and to reinforce it. There's a paradoxical theory of change, which basically is that if our nature is impermanence, if what we already are is the ongoing emptying out of everything from any fixed position, then any attempt to control or make ourselves better only deludes us and reinforces the idea that there is such a thing as a separate self. Any attempt to do anything about the nature of yourself, trying to change yourself, is just reinforcing the idea that you exist separately, and then you don't get the relief. You don't get to experience yourself as change. You get to stay stuck. And so don't do that. So this is why sesshin is so important for us. In sesshin, we learn how to relax and not try to stop thinking. Don't try to stop thinking. That's trying to change something. And just be relaxed right here, right now. And just touch into what's here. And just keep touching into what's here. Until your trust that you don't need to be something, you don't need to be this or that, can relax. And the inertia of that trust in awareness builds. And we get our samadhi. And that samadhi is not the point. Who cares? The point is that the samadhi is a good tool so that we can see how the elements lack identity. How all the pieces and parts that you think you are, or I think I am, lack intrinsic being, lack independent self. So that's samadhi, and then the insight into that is prajna, is insight, is wisdom, is when we see that, oh, I thought that was something, and it turns out it's fluid or it's spacious. So we refine our awareness down to the elemental level. And we're really then in the heart of session. This is why the session is so vital to our practice as Zen practitioners. We're looking into the heart of the great matter of our life. What is all of this really made of? So a few years back, in the midst of a retreat, with my hair really on fire and just looking into my existence for the sake of it, no goal in mind, just purely in it, there was this realization. I was looking at a red blanket on the couch. I was at home because I had injured my back, so I was doing part of it online. And as I looked at this blanket, I became really curious. It looked red. It was a red blanket. But what is red? It's supposed to be empty. I see this red right here in front of me. What is the meaning of its emptiness? And just fully went to the red. So completely that when you're experiencing phenomena, really notice that they're not out there. There's a space of mind or a awareness in which all of this is occurring, right? When I experience these floorboards right in front of me right now, they're really not at a distance. They're not out there. The experience of them is intimate, it's direct, it's right inside, it's here. Everything is not at a distance. Everything is right here. And so when experiencing the red of the couch or the red of the blanket, where was it? And I couldn't quite find any red. And suddenly it became very clear, like, oh, it's a little red there, but it's a little less red there. And then it's a little bit like there's a shape there that kind of distorts the red. So there's no red. There's red and pink, and red and more red and red and less red, and suddenly it's like, really, I can't find a thing that, oh, and if I'm quiet and I'm just with it, the heck is that thing? It has no identity. And then that just felt like it was everything. Everything has no identity, and yet it's easy to walk downstairs, make myself a cup of tea, and sit down on the couch and relax before the next period of session. It doesn't, or zazen. It doesn't mean that life becomes this void. So we're going to have to really go through a lot. This takes determination and hardship. This path is not easy. This doesn't go unless we fully let go of everything. Give up your whole life into this. You know, I was going to bring in a koan, but I don't want to it takes a lot of time, but, you know, Bodhidharma's first disciple cut off his arm for the sake of receiving the teachings. We shouldn't do things like this. It's not a wise idea for us. But it's a representation of just what it takes to genuinely, really live out a life that is, like for me, I'm going to be happy with. So let's really look into that. So what happens, maybe, I question my words around this. I don't want to talk about what happens, but as it seems to me, it feels like it becomes the difference between walls and windows in a sense. You know, a wall feels like it blocks you, and these wounds feel like they block my flow, or that I have to get rid of something in order to now be free to be myself. But as we see the lack of identity of the elements of these emotions and hindrances that we take to be ourselves, they become more like a window, more like maybe stained glass. The light of our true nature comes through our specific, idiosyncratic is not the right word, but something like that, unique qualities of woundedness and then the fact that we have seen through that woundedness into its emptiness and can bring that into the world and interact with people from that place where that wound in us doesn't scare us anymore. It's not that it's like there's nothing there at all. There's some, for me at least, some sense of like, oh yeah, I can still feel that place, but it doesn't catch me. And so when I'm a therapist and I'm interacting and they're bringing a similar wound that I can relate to, I can feel the resonance, but not feel at all that that's who the client is. And not at all that that's who my parents are, or whoever it is that I'm interacting with who thinks whatever they think about themselves. That's not what I see. I see the emptiness of that expression. Sometimes, in different ways, And others can sense that, and then they can feel your lack of attachment to the very same thing that you find yourself trapped, or they find themselves trapped in. So if you used to have this thing of, I got to work so hard and carry the burden of the world, and you've seen through that, then they can see you relax, and they might get a little bit of an insight as to, oh, maybe I can do that too. So I want to say that Buddha is diverse. In the Heart Sutra it says, all dharmas are forms of emptiness. Your expression of Buddha is different than my expression of Buddha. Even though we are all made of the same emptiness, of phenomena, those phenomena express themselves differently in you, and in you, and in you, and differently in me. And here's where it becomes wonderful to me. That's our harmony, that's Sangha. So Buddha is the unity, the emptiness of all phenomena. And Dharma is the diversity, the multiplicity of expression of Buddha. And Sangha is the harmony of you being one way and you being another way, and us working together in the same service, in the same essence of awakening and spreading that to the world. And I feel that's my responsibility to the world, and I think that's our responsibility to the world, and that's to let your individuality, your uniqueness shine. It's coming through. Look around, these are all forms of emptiness. This is a form of emptiness, this is a form of emptiness, this is a form of emptiness. It's just forms of emptiness. Look around and feel that. Feel the forms of emptiness that are here right now. You can hear them, feel them. So, I want to say that you matter. I promise you it's true. Everyone is affected by your practice. Everyone is. Everyone resonates with your freedom, maybe also your lack of it. People can perceive it, and they are reminded of themselves. They're reminded of their true nature. It's nice to be a little free, and it's nice to help a little. It helps when we can free ourselves from our wounds. But as Suzuki Roshi says, we should burn ourselves like a good bonfire, hot, without any traces, so that there's no trace even of the self, right? Then that's a real gift that we can offer to life. And this depends on our samadhi and prajna, and those depend on sesshin. We have this rigorous practice for a reason, and we have an incredible opportunity coming up in July, all day long, 5:30 to 8:20 for 5 days straight, a real opportunity to find and feel the lack of substantiality of what you think, what I think. And then another 3-day session in June, and a Zazen Kai coming up this weekend. So don't take this opportunity lightly. Mazu concludes with this. All dharmas are Buddhist teachings. All dharmas are liberation. Because all of these dharmas are their emptiness. So they are liberation. Liberation is true suchness. Suchness being the nature of things when it's not divided into object and subject. And not one thing is at all separate from true suchness. Walking, standing, sitting, and reclining are all inconceivable actions. Freeing yourself is truly not a self-serving activity. Please cease suffering for all beings.